Brief introductions. So I'm Steve Egan. I'm the Director of Global Solutions Engineering at Datameer. I've been with the company for just over 10 years now. And we're joined by Ryan Goodman, who is the VP of BI and Analytics at Reliant Funding. Okay, quick agenda. So first, we'll just do a few minutes introduction to Datameer at a high level. And then Ryan's going to go over Datameer's success story, how they adopted it and how they're using it. We will follow that by a live Datameer demonstration. And then, like I said, we'll follow up with questions and answers at the end of the slot. So here is a high-level Datameer overview. So in one sentence, Datameer is a managed SaaS offering designed for teams to go into Datameer to do data discovery, curation, transformation, analysis, and deployment within Snowflake. But let's break that apart a little. So there's really 4 main items I'd like to talk about that differentiate Datameer from the rest of the solutions out there and make us quite unique in this field. So number 1 is it's designed for hybrid teams. What does hybrid even mean? It means it's designed for multiple personas. So we have a low code, no code interface where less technical analysts can come in and point and click and design their data curation and transformations. We have a low code interface, which is maybe a power user can come in and write functions and nest them together and have a multi-line editor. And then, of course, we have a SQL editor, right, for your data engineers. SQL's not going anywhere. So we have a rich editor that has things like syntax highlighting, autocomplete. We can display your output columns. We can automatically switch back and forth between querying live and switching to Snowflake's native sampling. So those 3 together, invite all personas in, and you can mix those up, right? You can have one module be a, point and click transformation and have that feed into a SQL-based module and have that all nice and designed in a visual flow, really nice and easy to maintain. And we'll see all that in action. Second is we are offered as a service. So there's nothing to install in your cloud. There's nothing to install in your environment, on your desktop. With a few clicks, you're up and going, and you're able to use Datameer connected to Snowflake and be off and going in just a few minutes. So fully managed SaaS offering. Third is we have a semantic layer in there as well. So in addition to all the technical metadata that we infer from Snowflake being table names, column names, data types, we also allow you to add in business descriptions, catalogs, terms, custom attributes, business glossary terms, all that kind of goes on top to allow analysts to go in and really first search and discover, right, what's in Snowflake. A lot of times there's hundreds of databases, thousands of tables. So really use faceted searches, keyword searches to find assets of interest, and then go into modeling, transforming, validating, and it's really a circle. And then once you build your model, build your transformation, then you document, you add in that description, tag it so that others can utilize, what they've done and they're not operating in a silo. And lastly, we're native on Snowflake. What does that mean? Is we're not pulling data out, we're not pushing data back in, we're not making copies of it, we're not using a separate compute model. We sit on top of Snowflake and we're using their native compute. So that when you make your transformations and design your pipeline, we're writing that to Snowflake as views, as SQL views or tables. So that your consuming tools, your BI tools, your data science tools connect directly to Snowflake, because that's really the best compute model. So unique offering among those 4 items. And again, you'll see that in action coming up here in a little bit. But for now, I would like to hand it over to Ryan so that Ryan can talk about his success story over at Reliant. Looks like Ryan's muted. Are you able to unmute him?
There we go.
All right.
And then hopefully you can also see my screen.
We can.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Steve, for having me. Thrilled to be here with you. So as Steve mentioned, I run business intelligence and analytics for Reliant Funding. So I've been in the data and analytics space, wearing many different hats over the course of 19 years. So next year I'll be able to say I've been doing this 20 years, and I'll probably use that number for the next 8 years, so I don't date myself. But regardless, as I've gone through my own journey and seen ebbs and flows and cycles of technology, at Reliant Funding, we're in an interesting place where our point of departure was the development and evolution of our operations and loan origination system. And as part of that, I've led the shift to cloud. And so we obviously selected Snowflake as our data warehouse technology, where all paths, all data lead to Snowflake. And so our point of arrival for Datameer was really exactly what Steve had talked about, needing a centralized, simple, no-code, low-code solution for delivering data to the business. So what I'm going to do is share my story of how we arrived. And first I'll start talking a little bit about who is Reliant, right? What do we do? So Reliant Funding is a provider of alternative funding for small businesses, right? Over the last 14 years, we've funded over $2 billion to over 10,000 small businesses across the US who are in need of capital fast, right? Whether it's growth capital or scenarios occur in day-to-day or month-to-month where small businesses need cash quickly. So for Reliant Funding, unlike a traditional bank, a small business can come to us, a restaurant, a construction company, with a need of anywhere from $5,000 to upwards of $400,000. And we can work with, underwrite, approve, and potentially fund a merchant within 24 hours. So we've built a great reputation over the years as a leading provider of alternative funding for small business. And through our online and affiliate partnerships and strategic partnerships, frankly, it's highly likely that if you go out to Google and you type in small business loan or small business financing, it's highly likely that you're going to come across and hopefully interface with Reliant Funding. So because speed is a huge part of what we do as a company, that desire for speed cascades internally to our team, right? From a data and analytics perspective. So speed to delivery is everything for us as a team. Speed to deliver information across the entire organization. I provide context here from a operations perspective, right? We have lead generation, we have a sales and CRM. Operations for us is underwriting and portfolio management and collections. But nonetheless, the desire for us at Reliant Funding is to assimilate and provide both operational, predictive models, and overall provide insights to all of our lines of businesses. Now, for us, one of the issues that we have had in the past is, and many companies have, frankly, is this gap between data engineering and analytics. At Reliant Funding, the data engineering and analytics team is in one. So, right, I benefit in having both teams under my organization, and it's a small group. But even with a small group, right, a lot of times you'll have data engineers who may or may not have context around the business problems that we're solving. And so one of the big problems that we're always looking to solve in moving fast is shrinking that gap, reusing skills, and ultimately, finally, similarly, breaking down data silos, right? So rather than having data scattered across the organization, in different tools and different platforms, all paths needed to lead to our centralized source of truth, which in our case is Snowflake. So what I want to do, as I mentioned, in talking about this point of arrival, is kind of share the story how we got to Datameer and Snowflake. So for us, it comes down to mapping that end-to-end life cycle. So I showed you that visual of those funnels, right? So from lead generation all the way through funding a small business, we need to understand that full life cycle. And so at Reliant Funding, as I opened, we embarked on this journey where we implemented a brand new CRM, marketing automation, and loan origination system so that we can deliver value to our customers fast. We made a significant investment in technology and process that obviously we as an analytics team need to provide insights into. So in having this transition from legacy system to brand new system, the challenge that we had was blending these two systems together to provide that single pane of glass or visibility across two systems of record into central standardized metrics. And so when it came to the data engineering and the BI and analytics, historically, we ran everything on SQL Server. And so I say take one. So the first time we approached this problem was through me pairing a data engineer with one of my analysts who intimately understood the data and the business process. And so you had that kind of back and forth testing, iteration, and what was originally a 2-week project turns into 3 weeks. Now we're at 4 weeks. And then 4 weeks in, they're coming back to me saying, oh, we got to take 2 steps back and rethink how we're going to do this, right? At that point, I pulled the plug, right? Instead, we took another path where I decoupled the analyst from the data engineer, and we happened to use Tableau Prep as a more visual, codeless approach to building and testing and preparing data for analytics. Now, we were successful in deploying this Tableau Prep. The problem is that when we look at the end-to-end solution, right, with Tableau Prep, we were taking data out of a system of record, we're putting it into SQL, I'm having to extract the data into Tableau in order to get the right performance. And then at the end of the line, I have this spaghetti string data preparation, and now a data silo where I have both business logic, semantics, and data making multiple hops across multiple technologies before I can actually deliver it as a report. Now, there's multiple ways we could have improved and enhanced and streamlined this process. But at the end of the day, this solution worked. We were able to deliver and we were able to provide visibility. Enter the analytics modernization initiative after we deployed this. So we selected Snowflake last year as a move to shift to a cloud native analytics first data engineering platform, right? And we made the commitment that all of the data that we collect from all of the different sources, both internal and external, all paths led to Snowflake as our centralized repository for data lake, for data staging, for data analytics preparation, and ultimately delivery to our business and both internal customers and external customers. The benefit, right, in using Snowflake is I used to have a DBA full time to maintain the legacy analytics database, our SQL Server. Now things like sizing and performance and storage and backup and recovery are all streamlined where it's the analytics and data management team managing this with minimal overhead. It's been fantastic. And then from a data pipeline perspective, we actually moved to Azure Data Factory. So now we've shifted from this ETL SQL stored procedure mechanism to a data pipeline ELT. So we're moving data into Snowflake. It's staged, it's ready to be used. And then we are building on top of that business views to deliver to our business. Now, the challenge that we had when we just had Snowflake is I had my analysts writing code, building views, deploying it, and life is always easy when you're starting from scratch, right? But it quickly grew out of control where I have 20 different views. I've got now my Tableau preparation processing data, and now I needed to reel it all in so that I have my analysts all working in one place rather than being split between writing SQL code in Snowflake and using Tableau to pull data out of Snowflake and move it through these processes. So when we met with Datameer last year and we understood this cloud native Datameer platform that Steve reviewed, for us, it was a perfect solution to use on top of Snowflake. So now we have managed data preparation. We've been able to transform all of our Tableau Prep workflows where we were historically pulling data out of SQL or Snowflake and moving it through. All of those SQL or Tableau silos are broken down. Everything's in Datameer. And now I have these nice low-code visual workflows as a centralized place where all of our analysts now have access. Now, when we look at what the end-to-end flow looks like now, as I mentioned, we have ADF moving the data into Snowflake. So now all of my data is in Snowflake. I have Datameer on top of Snowflake so that we can essentially manage our views. And then all of our reporting feeds directly off of Snowflake. So when we went back to that original problem, right, of how do I provide that single view for our business using data from 2 different loan origination systems, take 3 was taking that Tableau Prep work, converting it to Datameer, and the level of effort to do so was literally 2 days for it to be ready, validated in Datameer, and technically available to deliver for business consumption. Now, and that's where we kind of get the 500%, right? You're taking 2 weeks worth of effort previously, and now we're talking 2 days worth of effort. Of course, benefiting from prior knowledge and experience and so on, but it's profound for us because we've solved 2 problems, right? One is I'm not having to schedule or daisy chain multiple processes to get data ready for business. And 2, all of the data is fresh inside of Snowflake. So when we look at, what this looks like visually, right? Because obviously we've been talking about what we're doing, but inside of Datameer, the way we approach this is we connect to our data sources. We can join both using a codeless approach, or we can inject SQL or utilize our SQL skills throughout the process. And ultimately, the output of this flow is a Snowflake view. So if you think about that, as I'm refreshing data throughout the day, historically, we had to schedule jobs to run. Now, as data is being put into Snowflake and being refreshed on an hourly basis, that data is readily available for reporting, where I no longer have to rely on these traditional move the data out of Snowflake, process it, and get it back and ready for reporting. Now I'm using this slide for this is actually a separate scenario that we addressed, and another outcome in using Datameer is that we've converted 8 different previously powered either pure SQL Server stored procedures, or we've converted our Tableau Prep jobs. This happened to be a stored procedure that historically took, I think, 20 minutes to run. And it was processing millions and millions of records. We could only refresh it once a day at night. And frankly, it was borderline unbearable for our business users to consume the information. It's very, very important information. So we said, okay, well, let's take that stored procedure. We'll pop it into Datameer. So we'd already done the validation work, right? The SQL was sound. We put it in the Datameer. We connected up to another data source that we use for dimensions and some additional measurements. We package it up, we deploy it as a view on Snowflake, and that 20 minutes of data preparation, processing, we were able to actually feed that live to our business And the entire report, which previously took up to 2 minutes to load, is now loading up in 10 seconds. And that was, that was frankly an experiment. We had no clue if it was going to take the same 2 minutes, but because we're leveraging Datameer to prepare the data, and we're leveraging the power of Snowflake to power, like as the engine to power this, we're taking 2 minutes and now it's down to 10 seconds. So that for us and our end users, they're feeling the benefits of Snowflake and Datameer together. And now when the business comes back to us and says, hey, can you add some additional data? Can you enrich this report? The process, the procedure now, go into Datameer, click a checkbox or check a box, test, and republish. Where before it was like a week-long change management process because we had to go all the way back up to SQL Server, change code, and then test it as it goes through that 3 hops through our system. So the last area of improvement that has been quite profound for us is that historically, when we would build views or we'd even build stored procedures, we lacked the cataloging and metadata to help us inventory the work that we've done. Even during this exercise of going through and looking at all of this code that runs on a scheduled basis, on a nightly basis, we were digging through code trying to figure out what does this do. And so once again, benefit of starting fresh, we have been able, as we've built our Datameer flows, to leverage the metadata in Datameer to write descriptions, to use tagging. They have the ability to add custom variables. So in other words, as we build one of these views, we built project status. We have, for Reliant Funding specifically, different classifications, right, for data governance purposes. We were able to add all of this additional metadata into every one of these views and data sets. So we're actually leveraging Datameer now to assist us not only with aiding speed of delivery, but also with some of our data governance. And so as analysts, as I plug and play additional analysts, and now as we're looking to get some of our power users, our business power users engaged, we're actually looking at Datameer as a way to eliminate even some of the data wrangling that our business analysts are doing, who are a little bit more savvy and operate as data workers, right? So, and this is just another example of how we're using, on top of a view, we're using Datameer to help us document and chronicle some of the business semantics for our data. So really the impact of us leveraging Datameer, it really has improved our speed, as I always say, speed to insight. As I opened, the speed of delivery, and as I call it, just-in-time analytics for Reliant Funding, Datameer fits perfectly in that mantra where we want to have just-in-time analytics, right? We want to release and get new data, new information into the hands of our business stakeholder as fast as possible, and then rapidly, continuously iterate on that and improve. This has reduced our technology overhead. So as I showed you that diagram where you have multiple hops, right, from SQL to Tableau to our reporting, now we have a very simple stack where I don't have more technology tools and I have people. And that's a big deal for us. So in addition, obviously the cost savings, I need one less technology tool or platform or service in order to deliver data. We talk about skill standardization. At Reliant Funding, we have a very good competency in SQL, right? SQL is very much our language. We have Python development in-house and for data science, but when it comes to data engineering and business intelligence, SQL for us is our competency. So being able to leverage those skills and leverage that competency and also leverage that existing investment we had and bring that forward has been huge for us to accelerate adoption and the rollout of Datameer. And then obviously cloud first. As Steve mentioned, we were literally just able to flip on the switch, connect it up to Snowflake in a couple of minutes and go, right? We didn't really have to install or configure or do much of anything to start building, testing, and utilizing Datameer with Snowflake. So as I mentioned, there's some cost savings, like actual results. I can't stress enough that nuance of moving data out of Snowflake is a huge deal, especially for us when it comes to data governance. The idea is that our data at rest exists in two locations: our system of record and our source of truth in our data warehouse. I don't need data living anywhere else in our enterprise. And frankly, I don't need data movement anywhere else in our enterprise, because we've made that commitment to centralize our data in Snowflake, and Datameer facilitates that commitment by running natively on Snowflake. Another interesting thing for us, the way that we're leveraging Datameer with Snowflake, is preparation for third-party consumption of data. So because we have many partnerships and strategic alliances that have reporting requirements externally, we're able to use Datameer to prepare data for third parties. We have views, which we then can leverage Snowflake's sharing capabilities to then expose the Datameer views securely to third parties, where historically we had a myriad of different solutions where we're moving data, we're transmitting data, not FTP, but many years ago we would have to like FTP data around. Now we have once again a centralized managed process for preparing data, and we're leveraging the power of Snowflake to deliver and share that data. And then similarly for data science, for a data scientist, where historically we'd have our notebook, where the first 80% of our notebook is data preparation. Now we've started moving that data preparation into Datameer, and we've trained our data scientists so that they can go in, leverage SQL or no code to prepare and refine the data to a point where we can actually leverage that for data science and training our models. And then the last result that we had that I alluded to earlier in the presentation is that because the data is moving via ELT, so we're extracting from our business applications, so Salesforce and our cash management and portfolio management, we're moving data throughout the day from our business applications into our Snowflake data warehouse. And because Datameer is utilized really for preparing views of our data, the result is we don't have to process or run like an ETL job or scheduled jobs anymore. The minute the data hits our data warehouse, the data is readily available for reporting. And so we've essentially opened the door up for Reliant Funding for real-time access to information as the day occurs. So for us, that's really been a transformation where a lot of our reporting historically was refreshed, once per day. So that really kind of sums up our experience, our success, and what I see is really still the beginning of our journey with Datameer and Snowflake. So by all means, if you have any questions or wanted to connect or want to share your experience, I've included my email and then also I've got my LinkedIn here. So with that, I thank you. I'll hand it back for any questions. I think I'm gonna hand it back to Steve. There's some more information that he was going to share here.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Great testament to Datameer's value proposition. So now we're going to go into a live demonstration of Datameer. So the demonstration will focus on some data sets within Snowflake and how an end user can go in, do some discovery on those data sets, maybe add a data set of his own. So we have uploading capabilities, which automatically create Snowflake tables behind the scenes. And then, go through the process of, refining, curating, transforming, and then finally publishing those data sets down to Snowflake as both a view and a table. So you'll get to see the whole life cycle here through Datameer. So bringing up the application, this is what you'll see. So I'm going to talk about the trial at the end here, but hopefully you'll get in there and try it out for yourselves. But in a few minutes, Datameer is instantiated. You enter your Snowflake credentials, and then we automatically introspect your Snowflake instance, and we give you an inventory of assets. So these are all the schemas and tables that exist within Snowflake. So really the first step here is discovery. What do I've got? Where do I find my assets of interest? So a couple different ways I can do that. So going in here, I can click on some of these items. And when I paginate through them, I can see the metadata over here on the right. So this is where that semantic layer comes into play. So there's that description. So it was tagged. We have custom properties. So maybe as a BI manager, I can say for all of my analysts who are creating projects, let's have them tag with, maybe where the data originated from outside of Snowflake, or, what department this goes to, or persona. So those can be customized. And once those are added, those then become facets that I can use to search on. So then I can search on, let's say, department, and then that will only show me the assets that are associated with that department. So nice and easy way to go down and find my assets of interest, as well as a Google-like keyword search. So I'm interested in a financial use case here. And this will search across all the technical metadata and all of these semantic data that we have in there as well. And we do have a concept of state and trust in there as well. So here's a couple of tables that match. They appear similar. It looks like one was migrated from one schema to another. So this tells me the single source of truth. So this is the, the certified data set versus maybe the legacy one. So we have that concept of trust in there. Maybe initially a data set will be loaded, and then it'll be curated to some degree, and then it'll be certified and vetted. So selecting one of these data sets, we can dive in a little bit and explore the metadata around there. So here is the column level annotations, the data types, as well as a bit of collaboration. So we have the ability to add comments in there so that users can collaborate on projects. We're always querying Snowflake in the background. So you'll see as we interact and build out our pipelines, we have that interactive workbench where we run the queries, we run the transformations that you're constructing, and so you could see the results of those. So there's a preview of the data, as well as a rich, some of the more rich metadata that we have for this asset. So here I can see I've got the description. I've got a glossary term in here. So we do have a business glossary that has name value pairs to standardize terms across the organization. And then those custom attributes that I mentioned. So there's where I can set, whatever department persona that this is geared to. But what I'd like to do is begin transforming this. So I'm going to go ahead and add it to a new project. So we'll go ahead and call this loans. Create that project, and that will bring me into my Workbench view. So here on the right, we bring up that metadata. So I have that front and center as I'm doing my design. On the left here, we have all the schemas and tables there within my Snowflake instance. And here's our preview of the data. We show you the size, the number of records. We can also get into metrics. So I can select any one of these individual columns, and then we can quickly calculate the distribution, the min, the max, the mean. And we're always optimizing the experience for the end user and making it as fast and interactive as possible, which is why we don't necessarily do this for all the columns at once. That would be inefficient. They'd be waiting there for a while, but rather, hey, let's select the columns of interest and then generate the metrics for those. So what we can do is use the preview of the data for discovery. And if I'm looking into my loan statuses here, I can see that some are charged off, some are fully paid. I'm only really interested in my current loans. So I'm going to start with the no code interface here. So I'm going to bring up our context. And here's the most common operations that analysts would run. And that's why they're in the sort of no code context menu here. So we've got joins, filter, replace here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to elect to set up a filter and just say I'm going to filter where my loan status is equal to, and then we'll put current in there. That's the value that I want to filter on. And then when we hit apply, I can add in multiple criteria into that filter. And then we'll actually run that query on Snowflake. So again, you can see the results of that. That's where the interactivity and the design comes from. Every transformation that we do, we convert that to a query, we run it live on Snowflake. Further transformations, if I'm looking in here, I can see I've got a zip code field. Looks like they've hashed out the last two numbers of that zip code field. What I can do is add to my recipe and say, let's add in a column extraction, and let's choose my zip code, and we'll derive a new column, and we'll say, call that new column zip and extract the first three numbers of that code. And then I can just scroll over and see the results of my transformation. And you'll notice we added another step to the recipe. So this is where we keep track of how this particular view was derived. So I can always derive the lineage of where this is coming from. Moving to the low code, let's say I'm a power user, I'm familiar with some of the Snowflake functions. So we bring those functions front and center. So here they are with the method signature, a little description. And here's where I have my formula editor, and I can just simply type my functions in. Let's say I want to take the left 4 characters of that, go ahead and apply. That will apply my transformation, and I can see the results. And this is where it can have multiple functions nested together, multiple lines. And oftentimes in queries, you have these formulas nested within the queries, rather difficult to maintain. It's nice and easy where I can kind of click on the columns and they're all segregated out. Much easier if a formula needs updating, I can go to this interface and then update it. So there it is in my flow. And what I'd like to do is bring in another table now and join these two together. And I'm going to switch over to my SQL persona now. Let's say I just want to write a SQL statement to join these two data sets together. I always say SQL's like the cockroaches after the nuclear war. They'll both be there. Throw Excel into that mix too. Why not? So let's go ahead and start up a new SQL view. And here's that editor I was referring to before with the syntax highlighting, the IntelliSense, and then rather than write that SQL live for you, we'll just go ahead and paste that in. As much as everyone wants to see me write a 20-line live SQL statement, but there it is. You can see the syntax highlighting. I can run that query that does a join between my two tables that I had there. And then I could show my output columns here on the right. And the advantages to me as a developer is sometimes I don't know how deep my table is. So sometimes I'll write a query, a join, and it just takes forever, eats up all my Snowflake credits. With Datameer, we automatically detect the depth of the table. And then if it's small enough, we'll just run it on the whole table. If it's too deep beyond a threshold, then we run it on Snowflake's native sampling, and that automatically happens, transparent to the developer. So that's one, well, there's many, but that's one value add just for a pure development use case that we automatically switch back and forth between full data and sampling, and we visually document it. So I didn't really connect these two dots there. What we did is, since we know that we're joining it together, we now connect those two visually inside of my editor. I've also got a file on my desktop as well that I want to join in with this flow. And if you've ever created a Snowflake table before and tried to load data into it, it's somewhat tedious. You got to create the table, you got to get the schemas right, you got to upload it, and it never uploads the first time. It always complains about 7 times about delimiters and quotes and things like that. So we wanted to make that nice and easy to add data sets to Snowflake. So here I've got a file on my desktop, and then I simply choose the schema that goes into, and then hit upload. And then behind the scenes, we create the Snowflake table and we populate it with the contents of that file. So just like that, I now have data in that I can then join in with the rest. And for this particular join, instead of the SQL route, I'm going to use our join wizard. So here I would select both sides of the join, which is the file I just uploaded and the existing pipeline that I had built. And what we're doing is we're scanning both tables here, analyzing both columns and giving you suggestions of what to join on. And we use things like similarity metrics, column names, data types, and score it too. So we have a score of 31% and a score of 100%, not just because it's a demo, it actually found that, gave it 100%. Now, more often than not, it does come up with pretty good suggestions, or we can always define them ourselves and then define the type of join. But we're going to use that suggestion, go ahead and hit apply, and then that will update my flow and then join in that file. And so far I focused on data prep, data discovery, data curation. Well, we also have data analytics built in. So from data analytics standpoint, we can do things like aggregate. We can do things like create pivot tables. So I'm going to go ahead and do a new aggregation. And so let's say I want to do a grouping and a measure here. So this is also very interactive. So I'm going to go ahead and group by the address state. And when I hit group, that will run that aggregate, show me the results, and then I can choose the measure, which is going to be my, say, average interest rate by state. And then I choose the metric that's going to roll that up. Let's average that up. So really, nice and easy design environment going on here. Hit apply, and then that will update my flow and add in my aggregation. And the second metric that I'll compute is pivoting. So if you've ever talked to an Excel user, what do they talk about? Pretty much just pivot tables. That's all they care about. But when they have data in Snowflake, that becomes problematic because they're used to Excel's nice functionality for pivoting. But are you going to pull that data out of Snowflake and put it in Excel and make another copy and just create a silo? Not to mention the scaling issues you might run into because Excel, kind of shuts down after a certain amount of rows. What we want to do is bring pivoting to Snowflake, except the pivoting in SQL is not super trivial to write. So what we want is a nice, easy way for users, technical and non-technical alike, to go in and pivot on data using the point and click. So I'm going to bring up a new pivot table. And now I could easily select my rows, which is going to be my address state, and then my columns, which is going to be that interest rate, or actually the grade, because I want to roll it up by grade. And we automatically analyze the column and we find the unique values within there and allow you to easily select which columns that you'd like. And then finally the measure, which is going to be the interest rate, and then go ahead and apply that. And we'll go ahead and average that up. And then there we have it. There's our pivot table in design view. And we'll go ahead and apply that. And then that will become another node that exists within our flow. So there's the pivot table. So now I'm ready to consume this with my external tools and publish it to Snowflake. So now we want to write it to Snowflake as a view initially. So to do that, I can select any one of these nodes for publishing. I can go ahead and publish to Snowflake. I select the schema that I want to put this in, whether it's a view or a table, and then say publish. And then we are writing all that SQL out to Snowflake. And to show that in action, I always like to go to the Snowflake side and bring up all the SQL that I did not have to write, to produce this desired metric. So there's the view right there. We can view that SQL and copy that into this larger editor, and there it is. So that is what was automatically generated by Datameer, taking into account the filter, the join, the extract, the SQL statement that we injected in there, all the things that we didn't have to do, and also much easier to maintain, right? Instead of having to maintain a giant SQL statement, I have a much easier way to maintain this. And even if you're only writing SQL, you could take a multi-stage query and divide it up visually and have SQL injected in each node here. And again, much easier to see the flow and maintain it and design it. And then finally, I can publish as a table. So let's say I didn't necessarily want it to be a view to be consumed, every time it's queried, it runs a bunch of SQL. Let's say I want to cache that as a table. So we also have the ability to publish that as a cache. And so once I publish that, that will then create a table. And once it creates the table that's visually indicated here in the editor, and then I can go in and I can actually schedule this, and I can schedule it to be refreshed every month, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, select the time. You can even put in a custom cron pattern if you're feeling especially geeky to run, every third Monday of every month at 2 a.m. But anyhow, that is where the scheduling, and that's also writing native Snowflake tasks out there to do that scheduling. And lastly, coming full circle, right? And then I document what I've done. So I want to put this back in the inventory of assets. So now I document, hey, here's the columns that I just produced. We'll go interest rate, we'll go state, put in the descriptions as well, and then tag it. And once I tag it and add those custom attributes, then that will show up as facets in that search. So going full circle, adding it back to the inventory so that it can be reused. And you'll notice that this is indicating that it's out of sync now. We can republish that back to Snowflake and rewrite it. So that is a run through of the product. We're going to get to questions now. There's already some in the chat window. Just before we get to questions, I'll just put out there that we do have a trial. So this is how you can try it out yourselves. If you can go to datameer.com. It's right up there to try it out. Or this is the direct link, signup.trial.datameer.cloud. Few clicks, you're up and going. You have your own Datameer. You can connect to your Snowflake, and then you'll have that exact experience that I just showed you and that Ryan talked about. You'll be able to immediately access your Snowflake assets and start transforming away. So definitely encourage everybody on the call to go ahead and try it out yourself. Super easy to get up and going. Okay, questions and answers. So first question. Do you have non-technical people using Datameer to find or create data sets? And are there visualization tools integrated so that they can press a button to visualize their newfound data set? If not, what's stopping you? So Ryan, I'm going to hand that one to you.
Sure. So yeah, we have not yet rolled out Datameer to our what I would say non-technical folks. We have previewed it with our I'll call them like data workers. So these are business people who are responsible for some facet of our business, right? Whether it be marketing or credit risk. And we've given them access to view Datameer, but we've not rolled it out as a mechanism for delivering data. We are still giving them access, in our case, to Snowflake. And if someone wants to, because these people are typically still downloading data for the data workers, or the interface that we provide data to is in Tableau, which is pre-built visualizations, pre-built tabular data views for the users. But it is 100% in our roadmap, leveraging what Steve just showed around like the tagging, excuse me, the tagging and the metadata management. Like the plan is to ultimately give non-technical users who operate as data workers to go in and explore available data sets because you can't really do that in Snowflake, right? Datameer is the appropriate place to navigate the catalog of views and data available to us, but we're not quite there yet. Yeah. Oh, Steve, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Great. Next question, Ryan. Can you give us an idea of what is next for your team at Reliant Funding with Snowflake and Datameer?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Probably the biggest project or initiative that we have right now, as I mentioned, the strategy is all paths lead to Snowflake. And so one of the biggest projects that we have on my docket, right, is really overhauling and building a best of breed credit risk platform in Snowflake. So for us, what that means, we have a decisioning engine, we have models, we have a pretty robust underwriting and decisioning process and model, where in order to monitor and manage this complex decisioning model, it requires us to build and manage a lot of attributes over time. And so by using Datameer, it gives us an easier way, excuse me, to engineer or re-engineer a lot of our business rules in our model, our decisioning model. And ultimately, we'll be able to run reports, run analytics on our decisioning and our underwriting and decisioning infrastructure directly out of Snowflake. And it's going to be Datameer that we do version and attribute and rule management so that we can measure the progress, measure tests, and ultimately have a single, as I mentioned, that like single version control and management without us having to manage, massive amounts of code. So that's probably the biggest initiative that I have on my docket and what's next. Just piggybacking and leveraging the early success that that we've had so far on the reporting side.
All right, great. Next question, has spreadsheet sprawl decreased? Are people comfortable using Datameer's spreadsheet interface, or do they still prefer Excel? Ryan, do you have that experience over there? Do you have Excel users that have gotten on Datameer, or have they gotten there yet, or are they still in their Excel worlds?
No, I mean, they're still in their Excel roles. I mean, at Reliant, we try to leverage, we try to limit the data dump to Excel to perform analysis. We tend to actually leverage Tableau for a lot of the slicing and dicing and exploration. I think where it has changed, less on the business side and more on the data preparation side. A lot of the like profiling and analysis work that we typically had to do, export the data or push it to another tool. We're able to get a lot of that basic data profiling information, record counts and null counts and distributions and things like that. It's all baked into Datameer. I mean, Snowflake also has a data profiling function, but the nice thing is, though it's less Excel, I found that we don't have to go back and forth between Datameer and Snowflake. So I'd say we haven't really changed our Excel with the business, but what we have done is decrease the amount of time that we spend in the Snowflake or Snow site, right? We're doing a lot of our data wrangling work in Datameer now, and or query, writing queries and so on. And ultimately that strategy has played out quite nice.
Yeah, and I'll tag on to that too a bit. So the UI, as you could see, is sort of modeled after an Excel. So you have the preview, you got the formula editor. I think you'll have the type of person, that is comfortable in that type of environment that can just come in and leverage that UI. That's kind of why we also brought pivoting in, because like I said, that's a common Excel task. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, we view Excel as like a desktop BI tool almost. But hopefully once the data is within Snowflake, we want to bring those users to do, at least the transform aspect of their work to Snowflake. versus pulling it out. Maybe do transform, curate, cleanse, and Datameer on Snowflake, and then pull out an extract, and then do BI-like items with Excel.
Yeah, as far as like translating Excel skills over into Datameer, I think the trick in doing that, because that is in our roadmap. As Steve pointed out, there's like a pivot function. I'd say 90% of what our Excel users end up doing is taking data in a tabular format and pivoting, creating pivots. So kind of the way to show someone to water, I guess, because especially those users who end up rebuilding the same darn spreadsheet over and over and over again, the way that we're showing them to water, and because we previewed this, is we say, all right, check this out. We took your spreadsheet and the 12 tabs worth of steps that you have to go from raw data to the ultimate output. And so what we've done is we've built a flow, right, where we can show the 7 or 8 steps. And we say, okay, here's your raw data. Here is your ultimate output that you're having to produce over and over again every week. Imagine not having to do that ever again, right? And so that like initial aha moment of translating like this Excel step, multi-tab, multi-pivot table process into this like flow, that's usually, at least in the past, how I've gotten Excel users to make that leap from multiple tab, multiple pivot tables to this flow-based modeling. So, but that's absolutely in the roadmap.
Okay, last question. I think we have time for one more. How does the performance of Datameer compare to the performance of Tableau Prep?
I mean,
in your experience, yeah.
It's, and some of our flows 10 to 20 times faster, right? I mean, the reason is that, especially in the more complex prep jobs, we're having to shuttle millions of records out of our system of source of truth, right? So from Snowflake or SQL or whatever, we're having to move millions of records from one system to another, right? And then it's having to process. Now the processing is whatever, right? But just having to move data, run it through, and then post it back, whether it be a Tableau view or having to push it back to the database, like that flow in itself performs more like a traditional ETL job. So performance-wise, as I mentioned, when we talk about the process and the development process performance-wise, historically it would take like 20 minutes to make an update. Now, I don't know, 30 seconds, right? 10 seconds. So I think we see the biggest performance gain when it comes to the iterative design process and development. And then from a day-to-day standpoint, you're taking something where we had to carve out like a 30-minute window for this thing to run. That's gone away. I don't need to figure or think through windows anymore. It just runs natively. So that's really where we've gotten the biggest performance. And then frankly, with Snowflake, if something is running slow, right, we have different data warehouse. I can scale it horizontally, but I can scale it vertically. So the more compute intensive queries that we have, where maybe we only need it to run once a day, I just go in, like as the head of analytics, I go into Snowflake, I click a button to change the warehouse, and boom, it runs an order of magnitude faster. So that's really where like the Snowflake Datameer and like having control over performance without having to go back to data engineering has been kind of a game changer for us.
Great. Well, thank you, Ryan, for joining us. Again, great testament. Thanks everybody out there as well. I just want to leave it with the trial link. So again, encourage everybody to go and sign up for the trial, try it out for yourselves. And with that, we can go ahead and close it out. We'll be sending out a recorded version of this to everyone afterwards. So thanks everyone again, and have a good rest of your day.